With technology touching so many different parts of businesses these days, companies have created so many different tech leadership roles at the top level that it has caused confusion around who is responsible for what part of the technology stack. Would a consolidated super chief of technology be the answer? We're going to discuss this on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is John Spence. He is the North American Managing Director of Data and AI at ThoughtWorks. And Thomas Davenport. He is the President's Distinguished Professor of Information Technology at Babson College. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
And the reason we've got two of you on the show is because both of you recently published an article and study around the idea that more than 80% of technology and data leaders have reported confusion in their organizations about the roles of different technology-oriented groups. So I want you to, for those of us who haven't lived this, because we've seen the chief blank officer. It started off with CIO, and then all of a sudden we started adding chief data officer, chief technology officer, chief and now we're in the world of AI, and I'm starting to hear of chief AI officers. Can you give us a quick history lesson about the rise of these different C-level technology titles within that corporate workspace?
Sure, I'll start because I think I'm older than John, so I was around for all of this. So early in my career, actually, as an IT consultant in Cambridge, Mass, across the river in Boston, this guy who worked at the First National Bank of Boston, which is now Bank of America, named Bill Sennett. He and his favorite consultant, Bill Gruber, came up with this idea of maybe we should call this head of IT role Chief Information Officer.
Right.
And I can't actually remember if it worked for Bill Sennett that he was given that job officially, although he clearly aspired to it. And, that became fairly common. It's pervasive now. Chief technology officers were first in tech firms, but a lot of non-tech firms decided, well, that sounds cool, and we want to be like a tech firm, so they created that role. I'd like to think that there was more systematic thinking behind it, but I'm not sure there was. And then the first Chief Information Security Officer appeared in 1995. Chief Data Officers, Chief Analytics Officers started to pop up, primarily in companies with a lot of data like financial services, but then they also became pervasive. Chief Digital Officers appeared, I think, primarily with digital transformation and e-commerce and so on. They were kind of outwardly facing toward customers in many cases. And you knew we had a problem when we started to have intersecting initials, chief data officers and chief digital officers. Right. And as you say, chief AI officers have appeared, chief data analytics and AI officers in some cases, and combinations, which means I think an unhealthy set of letters to remember for many of those who try to do it.
Yeah, it's almost like you have a problem when the acronyms are starting to get confusing and you can't figure out what the D stands for. Is it data, digital, or something else? And then you add another letter, so that's why you get. For CISOs, you get Chief Information Security Officer, which is different from the Chief Security Officer for some reason. So when did you first start noticing this confusion and that it was becoming a problem? Again, why did you then reach out and do this survey tracking this confusion? John, why don't you jump in on this one since you did the survey?
Yeah. So the problem our clients were facing was the responsibilities. I think the growth that Tom described represents that growth of responsibilities, the expansion of responsibilities. Am I responsible for, in the 80s, just getting payroll out, whereas in the 2000s and now you're responsible for assets and capabilities that are critical to the business. And so with the expansion of that responsibility, you start crossing boundaries. And is this a business responsibility? Is this a technology responsibility? And of course, if you have all of these different officers, well, I'm the AI officer, I'm the data officer, I'm the technology officer, you start to get a little bit of a turf war or confusion as to who is actually responsible for driving the outcome. So this is where these super tech leaders have started to emerge.
Yeah. You're jumping ahead just a little bit. we don't want to spoil.
Right.
We don't want to spoil it too much. But like, is this really a big deal for companies? Like to be confused about like what are the consequences of this? Because if it was just a matter of like, well, I don't know who to talk to, I could eventually figure it out. But this is really causing actual problems within these organizations, right? You followed up on a lot of these questions in this survey, like how is this really affecting your business? So it's not just about, oh, I don't know who to talk to, but it's a lot more than that, right?
Absolutely. It really has to do with driving the business outcomes that the organization is looking for these technology leaders. And so it becomes that a little bit of a game of beach ball is, well, I thought you were taking care of it. You're the technology officer. I thought you were taking care of it. So the CEOs and the executives of the firms, the directors on the board are looking for these technology capabilities in their organization to deliver, and they're feeling they're falling behind, or they're not achieving the outcomes they're looking for. They're seeing a lot of money being invested, but not actually delivering results. And so that's where that separation of responsibilities. Who is actually responsible for driving this outcome? Who's responsible for exploring these new technologies and new capabilities in the organization? This is where the challenge it really hits the business.
Yeah. And you also found, go ahead, Thomas. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I got interested in the topic when I was talking to a person at a large investments firm in the Boston area, and he really aspired to be chief data officer for the company. And apparently that idea had surfaced and gone up to the top of the organization, and the CEO said, forget about it. We've already got too many C-level tech people. And so I wondered how common, those of us in this field kind of knew that there were a lot of these roles and they were starting to collide a bit and so on. But I was just curious, how pervasive was the issue and what problems did it cause? And frankly, I don't know about John, I was somewhat shocked to find out that the incumbents of these roles felt like it was a problem. They felt like it was confusing to the organization. They'd had cases where they'd been held back by responsibility debates with other people in those roles. So it turned out to be a much bigger problem than I realized.
And you even discovered that some of these new roles didn't necessarily report to a CIO, but rather reported directly to a CEO, right? Like the reporting structure was also a mess because, for whatever reason, if a company wanted it, like I don't want to report to the CIO, or the CIO, I want to report directly to the CEO to maybe it makes them feel more important, but that's creating issues too, right? Because then you get personality clashes and, well, I don't have to do anything for you because I don't work for you type of a thing, right?
I've seen some really serious clashes where the chief data and information officer wouldn't even talk to each other, for example.
Wow.
And this is crazy when data and information, I think, probably have a lot in common in abstract.
Well, yeah. Well, it also, I've seen some cases where I've talked to people where you get a split of divisions within that IT group, and you have one group that's like, well, I'm responsible for keeping the lights on, and I'm the one who puts out the fires in terms of internal employee uses and devices. And then there's this like thought leadership guy who then decides, and I just say guy, it could be a woman as well. I just want to make sure clear of that. But like there's the person who then thinks about strategy and vision, and most people are aspiring to that vision and strategy position rather than the person that just has to keep the lights on, right?
Right. And you think about it from a perspective of somebody who is running the parts of the business, somebody who is, in charge of marketing or in charge of operations, and they want to get something done. they need to get a new system put in place, or they're looking to explore how can we start using AI to support our business. And they have to go through this list of individuals and connect with each one of them. And, well, can you help me with the security aspects to this? Can you help me get the data I need? Can you help me implement the systems? What cloud is this going to go on, and how's it going to work? Suddenly you have this responsibility of coordinating. You're a contractor, the prime contractor on an initiative, rather than just saying, tech folks, can you get this done for me?
Yeah. So, all right. So now I'm going to jump ahead to a potential solution. And in the research in your article, you suggest that a possible solution to this is the creation of what you call super chief or super tech leader, right? I think we're mixing the terms a little bit, but it's basically one person who would report to the CEO and or board, but then work with people on the tech side and the data side. Not necessarily creating a new position. We're not suggesting that all of a sudden we create a new person that does all of this, but is it more that the CIO should be the person that should be this super tech leader, or would it be someone from the data side, for example? Like how would, if you were running a company, how would you kind of consolidate this if you saw this, at a company?
Well, I would say there are two answers to that question. And one is, which role is the most well-established and already has the most people and budget reporting up to them. And in most cases, that is the CIO, I think it's fair to say. But the other issue that you'd want to use in making that decision is, who's more likely to lead, tech-enabled business change within the organization? And if your CIO is a keep the lights on type person, I did a survey a few years ago suggesting that there were about a third of CIOs who really, are less interested in business change than they are keeping the infrastructure running, then I think it would be a huge mistake to put the CIO in charge of all these other functions.
Right.
But in general, when we started to look around for these super tech chiefs, I was surprised that there are as many as there are already. They have a variety of different titles, but most of them have CIO as, I think, their original title or their primary title.
Yeah. Okay, so we're not seeing a lot of titles that are calling themselves super chiefs. That's a little bit of an
we only
ego
wrote
thing, right?
the article, a few months ago, so who knows?
And so. Yeah, so you're not suggesting that anybody then create a new role that has those responsibilities, right? It's almost like pick the best person for that job. And then what would they do? What they would just basically be the liaison between the board and the CEO, and then the rest of the tech organization. Get rid of these direct lines to the CEO, so to speak.
Well, first thing, I want to go back to something Tom said and point out that these individuals have emerged. So this is less about saying, well, let's create something new. There are people who've been successful regardless of their title. They've just sort of surfaced because of they have the right capabilities. And then to your question, it's then how do you enable those individuals to be most effective for the organization? So you're reducing the reporting lines, simplifying the process for them to execute and drive towards outcomes. So is it giving them direct access to the CEO or direct access to the board? Is it giving them a bit of vagueness in their responsibility and definition of their role and driving towards outcomes? So it's enabling them to be most successful.
Yeah. And so there was another dissent that you had in the survey, that there were a lot of people that said that they didn't think that this idea might be a great idea because you would need some kind of checks and balances between the world of technology and the world of data. Do you have thoughts on that part of the survey where people were like, oh, we're not so sure this might be a good idea, that you do need a little back and forth between people within the tech part of the company?
Yeah, I personally don't agree with that, but that comment came from one, I think he was a CDO who was also acting CIO, and he had come from a bank where he had a strong risk orientation. And, maybe under those circumstances, I could see why you might want to split up some of the roles. But in general, I don't think it's necessary. And none of the super tech chiefs that we spoke with raised it as an issue. Maybe it's not in their best interest to do so. But some of them actually insisted. I think we talked to Sean McCormack at First Student, who I think is a client of yours, John. He said, I won't take a job that doesn't have all of those kinds of different responsibilities. You just can't make things happen without them.
Yeah, John, anything else to add on that?
Oh, I think
do you agree with that dissent, or do you agree with Thomas?
Well, I agree with Tom on the point that in a heavily regulated environment or special situations, special circumstances, you might need particular controls.
Yeah,
and that makes a lot of sense. But controls are always in place to make you move a little slower, to ensure that you're safe or you're well governed or you meet certain compliance needs. But it does mean that things have to slow down a little bit. And so if you need that level of control, that risk mitigation in the process, makes perfect sense. Most of the time, most of the clients that we're working with are struggling with the fact that they're not going fast enough, that things are falling in the cracks and they're not getting the outcomes. So I would say that control where you need it, where it's prudent, but really try and focus on the speed and enabling people to move quickly.
All right, so let's say a company then gets to the point where they're like, okay, we definitely need this. We've looked at our organization. We're seeing that there's these bottlenecks and that there's clashes and it's slowing everything down. We need to get faster. So this is one of the ways that we're going to do it. What are the skills that you think what skills does a person need to have to become one of these super tech chief things? I'm sorry, I've got to come up with a better title for this. Is it definitely, the softer skills, the leadership, the business strategy, and less about the technology knowledge? It feels like that if you're one of those tech geeks, you might not be suited for this role versus one of these people that have this strategy, leadership, and gets along with everybody type of people. Or does it not matter? I mean, it might not matter, right? Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, there is that issue of certainly, needing to manage up well. And in our survey, we found that many of the people we interviewed thought that managing up skills were probably more important than, managing downward, managing the tech people who report to you. But we found a surprising amount of technological orientation among some of the super tech people we interviewed. One had programmed an Arduino device to do something with one of their products, and some other super tech leader, I think it was Sastry Durasula at TIAA, who has every tech function plus some customer service functions, said, I code for fun on the weekend. So I think that can help you get the respect of the people below you if you have some notion of what's going on in terms of the details of the technology.
Yeah. Because otherwise they might not give you the respect that you need if you don't know anything about technology, right?
But there's also that I agree with this point. I found this really a little charming, actually, is that these individuals were doing it they weren't doing it to necessarily impress or stay current, though they were all passionate about that, but it was really their passion for technology that drove this. They were excited to play with Arduino or Sean in coding with his daughter and helping her through school and learning together on Copilot. There were these examples of people who really enjoyed it. And I think that passion is one of the things that has made those super tech leaders successful in their careers. This is fun. This is stuff I love to do. Do
you think that most of these roles will come up through the IT department or the technology department because they are so enthusiastic about technology? If I had to do this as an analogy, would it be like, all right, is it more of a business entree with a tech side dish in terms of your knowledge and skills, or is it a tech entree with the business side dish where you 80% of your knowledge is around technology, but you also know how the business runs, or is it the other way around? Like, where do you see most of those people in the super tech world falling?
I think it's changing. In the old days, I think in order to really understand technology well, you probably would have had to come up through the IT function. But now, somebody said to me recently, a chief information officer at Liberty Mutual, he said, when I look in at meetings that we have between IT people and business people, it's harder and harder to tell the difference between them. And so I think it's generally a good idea for somebody to have experience in both, technology roles and the business side. And I think you'll be taken much more seriously by the CEO and the board and other C-level executives if you have some business experience, even if you've had a P&L actually at some point in your career.
Yeah. John, anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that if you look at the education process and the change and development in technology over the past few decades, it's definitely the people who are coming out of school now or in the past couple of decades have had a focus on technology in their education.
Yeah.
They might have had to learn to code in that introductory program, but it has been recognized that you must understand this. You must look at this as an asset, as a strategic tool within your toolkit. Whereas in the past, there definitely was a mindset from business stakeholders. Listen, I engage the tech people to do the tech stuff for me. You take care of that and tell me what matters. That you can't operate that. You can't be competitive, especially you mentioned digital organizations. You can't be competitive in that environment if you're separating technology and business.
Right. Now, yeah, in the older days, you could, if you were a business leader, you didn't have to worry about the tech part of it. But now, since technology is touching every part of the business, it would feel like all of your business leaders would at least have some knowledge of technology and the tools and what works and what doesn't, so that you get a little bit more respect if you became one of these super tech leaders from like the business side. Is that an outlier or not? It could, maybe not in the future, but maybe now.
I think it's less and less of an outlier. I'll put in a minor plug for my latest book called All Hands on Tech, which is about the sort of citizen movement relative to technology. And I think AI is just going to exacerbate that. Anybody can code if they know enough to say what they want. And out comes a perfectly functional, in some cases anyway, Python program. So I think it's just going to become quite pervasive that people have had some experience in developing systems, or at least participating in a system development initiative.
Tom, what a great segue, because we're moving into the generative AI portion of the show. We can't do one of these episodes
obligatory on every podcast.
That's right.
Without talking about generative AI. Has the rise of this exacerbated this issue with the organizational structure, because generative AI does touch so many different parts of the technology of the business. We're not talking about just one Gen AI tool to maybe help the IT department. It's affecting marketing, it's affecting sales, it's affecting accounting, it's finance, all those parts of the company. So is this what is causing this, or was it always there? And this is like, okay, in order for us to get a handle on what we're going to do with Gen AI moving forward, we definitely need to have this organizational structure in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I would definitely say this has been a movement over time that we've seen, with a move towards digital organizations. We've been going in this direction, but 2023, after the release of 3.0, it cranked it up a notch.
Yeah.
The businesses, the experience that personally I had going into 2023 was this massive awareness by business executives, by boards, turning around and saying to their technology organization, "Hey, what are you doing about this generative AI stuff?" And many of the clients or organizations we talk to were, "Hey, we've got to scramble. We've got to get something in place." So the pressure on the organization, the expectations that have come out of the release of, starting with GPT 3.0 in November of 2022, it's just driven these organizations to say, this is the future. And where many companies, you think in pharmaceuticals or you think in financial services, sure, they've been using data science for decades, but now it's really hit the mainstream in such a pervasive way. And so now that really does put the pressure on the organizations. How do I bring this into the arsenal as well? How do I make this part of the tools and things we bring to market?
Yeah. The feeling that I got with a lot of this, the generative AI stuff, and the reason I'm asking this question is because it feels like that everybody wants a piece of that AI pie, for example, or this is the golden ticket for the Willy Wonka factory, and everyone's grabbing this. And so the chief data officer is like, no, I need this because it's data. And then the chief technology officer goes, no, this is technology. And the CIO goes, no, guys, this is all CIO. This is all our stuff. And so that's why, the rest of the company sees this, or the CEO and the board sees this and goes, we have to like consolidate now before we get into this strategy. Otherwise, all they're doing is then going to create we'll create a chief AI officer. Or my other new least favorite term is this whole center of excellence. And that becomes, we'll just have a committee of people doing it, right? And that could lead you down some really bad paths too, right? Tom, are you seeing this kind of battle for AI?
Oh, absolutely. And we asked a question on this survey: who's responsible for generative AI? And it was all over the map. And I've talked to organizations where a very prominent healthcare organization, everybody I talk to there, who's responsible for generative AI? I am. And you talk to the next person, no, I am.
I'm in charge.
And so it's a really good career enhancer if you can get people to believe you that you're responsible for it. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess then what are the consequences if a company does not look at this organizational structure at this point? Can they survive? I mean, obviously you've seen people that have created these center of excellences or the chief AI officer while I think they figure out the rest of the issues, right? Like it feels like they're going to have to go towards this consolidation, or can you survive? And is this just something that MBAs at Harvard just like talking about with the internal organizational dynamics of a company? That just seems like it's a lot of inside baseball here.
I don't know if it's going to be a stark survive or die line for organizations, but you see those companies that just keep making the right decisions and keep moving forward and seem to be ahead of the curve or ahead of their competitors. I think if you're not prepared for absorbing the new technology, how it will change your organization, how it will change you work with your customers, how you operate, you're going to be one of the people looking over at those other companies and saying, wow, I wish we'd gotten to that first, or I wish we'd done that. So I think it is an important differentiator, and it is important too. It's new. It's something that people are figuring out. And this is where I think, going back to that excitement these successful super tech leaders have around technology, exploring the new tech, figuring out how is this going to change the game for us. Those people, that capability, and those people will help your organization be at the head of the curve. Yeah.
Tom, anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I agree with John. And in a way, I think it will be a natural process. And I think it was natural in many of the organizations that already created these roles. You find somebody who's very capable and business oriented and who gets along well with the CEO and who advises him or her. Then you kind of slowly give that person more responsibility, and you're not going to say, well, generative AI comes along, I'm going to create a whole new chief AI officer that doesn't report in through this person I've learned to trust. You wouldn't dream of that. And one of the things we found was that chief AI officers, at least now, are the least well connected to the rest of the organization of any other type of leader. And, that would be really bad to have this really important resource be led by somebody who wasn't connected to anybody else. So I think we'll slowly see that the well-managed organizations will do this more, and the organizations that do it will become, better managed.
Do you definitely see this happening in the future with the super chief leader, where it becomes a different title than what you've currently got, or do you think that let's just say that we give this to the CIO? Does this elevate the importance of a CIO, or does it? Or do you need that new title? And and we're going to start seeing like super chief information officer, like SCIO or super officer SO.
I think that
but again, that's going to be, you're going to have to come up with a better acronym.
I think that would be a good way to make your fellow C-level executives quite resentful.
Right.
What you tend to find, I was reading this morning about Diogo Rao, who we didn't profile in the report, but he's the Chief Information and Digital Officer at Lilly. And you tend to see combinations, Chief Information Digital and Data Officer, or Chief Information and Data Officer, or something along those lines. They don't list all the things typically for which these super tech chiefs are responsible, but they list 2 or 3. And I do not think that the super tech leader or chief is going to take off as a title,
right?
Nor did we intend it to be.
No. I think again the point of these individuals emerging, they were the right individuals who showed up, and it was less about giving them a title and actually more about giving them just the autonomy, the space to be as successful as possible.
Yeah.
So they don't have great titles. They don't need great titles.
Do you think that the person that becomes this super chief, do they have to advocate for this role themselves, or is it going to be a board level decision where the board and the CEO is going to say, all right, you're now in charge of this and you are this, or is it going to bubble up from those types of leaders?
I think the most successful individuals are the ones who are going to earn the right through success in the organization. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to step in. The ones, and again, going to the individuals Tom interviewed, they are leaders who just stepped into the void, stepped into the gap and made it happen. Now, what the executives in the organization need to do to be most successful is recognize that and give those people that autonomy. So focus on how do I enable my star players to step up and drive that sort of change. I think I really do very much agree with Tom's point. If you go into if you've got all of these CXOs in the technology space and go, all right, you now all report to that person, and they're the super tech leader, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
What you often find is that, these people move around from one company to another a lot. And people like Sean McCormack and Sastry Durvasula at TIAA have said, sorry, I don't want that job you're offering me unless you can make it a little bit more comprehensive.
Yeah,
right.
Add some tech functions. I don't want to be competing with a chief data officer. So I'm more than happy to have that person reporting to me, and I respect them, and they'll do well under my leadership, but I'm not going to have a separate role for it.
All right. Do you think in a couple of years that it'll be one of those things where this is just common for every company, and we, are we doing a little bit of navel gazing right now, or is this something that a company is going to be constantly looking at? Especially as new other technologies come out, and there's the tendency to create a new position based on whatever technology comes out.
I think.
Did I stump you guys? I couldn't have stumped you guys. That was my last question.
Trying to be diplomatic about this.
Okay, there you go.
I think there will be some organizations that hear this and say, all right, let's put a super tech leader, let's create the super tech leader role without really thinking about what do you have to do to change to to make that role successful.
Yeah.
So we'll slap a super tech leader in there and that'll fix everything. Well, no, if you had organizational challenges before that prevented those type of people surfacing or even being successful in the organization, then slapping that role in is not going to make that person successful. You really need to think about, how do I enable talented connectors, these orchestrators, to be the most effective in the organization? And just putting the role in is not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tom, this is more of a thing for large companies too, right? Like if you're at a smaller or a mid-sized company, you're probably watching this going, I do 20 of these things anyway. I'm already the super chief, and it doesn't really matter what my title is, right?
Yeah, particularly, I think it meant most of those things would fall under the CIO in a small company. But I think, unfortunately, in small companies, you tend to find that the CIOs are a little less sort of, business innovators and a little more, keep the lights on.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't be as likely that you combine all of these capabilities under one person anyway.
Right.
I mean, the key is that whoever is in this consolidated role, that they recognize the importance of data and information security and analytics and digital, interfaces to the customer and so on. And, that takes a special type of person, I think.
Yeah. All right, guys. Again, some fascinating topics here, especially in that CIO world, in the C-level space. So again, thanks for joining us on the show today, and have a great day. I guess.
You too. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's episode. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.